Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Chapalang Film Podcast. I'm your host, Say Peng. We also have film director and co-host Choo. Today's episode is a bit special. We are going to talk about the films we've seen at the recent Singapore International Film Festival, which ran from 30th November to 10th December. Our guest today is Brandon Chai. So Brandon is a school teacher by day and a cinephile by night. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Brandon.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I guess I'm just somebody who likes film. I'm not really somebody who is working in the industry. I I'm basically a MOE school teacher, and movies are just my hobby. I'm very glad to be here today to talk to Say Peng and Jon about SGIFF, the latest SGIFF that we went to.
Yeah, so happy to have you. There's in fact a very legit reason why we decided to invite you, Brandon, and maybe just a bit of a background for listeners. Me and Brandon, we met each other way back in 2015 at SGIF's Youth Jury Critics program.
Yeah, I think it was Youth Jury 2015. I think it was the year where I think Morrison Makmabaf came down, right?
Yeah. And Api Chapong also came down.
Yes, and Api Chapong also came down. So it was quite a surreal experience, right? Like to finally see all these people that people talk about and films of the people that you have of these people that you have watched, right? And suddenly they are in the flesh. I think SGIF is quite a cool way to bring, I guess, cinephiles and filmmakers together. Yeah.
Yeah, and 2015 was the second edition of the Youth Jury Critics program. We met each other there and we bonded over our love for slow cinema. You know the Taiwanese new wave, or your Tsai Ming-liang, Ho Xiaoxian, Edward Yang, and your European slow cinema, right? Bellata,
I think
Tarkovsky.
also right somewhere after that there was a time where they were running a Ho Xiaoxian retrospective. So
Yeah.
I think it this was at the Cinematheque at NMS, right, National Museum of Singapore. So I think that was the time where I think I saw you very often, right, Seping? Like I think we watched basically every single film in the retrospective.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
even his commercial work before
Yeah.
he's made Boys from Feng Kui and go on to make all his masterpieces and all that.
His more Chapalang films lah.
Yeah. It was studio film lah. It was a
Right.
very, very hardcore studio idol film. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember during the critics program, you, me, and Zach, we collaborated on an article talking about slow cinema, right? And then and I think a few of the short films of the Southeast Asian short films competition that year, like Chiang Wei Liang's film, and a couple of other shorts, we were trying to discuss it in the context of slow cinema.
Yes. I think we had quite a lot of opinions about slow cinema. You know, some of us can watch through like films like Tsai Ming-liang's Walker series, and some of us find it unbearable, right? Because it's just literally Li Kangsheng in a monk attire, and he's just walking around. If I'm not wrong, it's Marseille. Yeah, like various locations in Marseille, and that was just it for like 70, 80 minutes. Yeah, and walk in a very, very deliberately slow way some more. So it's like, yeah. I mean, looking back now, right, I think that I wasn't really that mature also lah in my way of looking at films and understanding films. I think a lot of it had to do with this like sexiness of slow cinema that was emerging at around that time. Yeah, like one person do it, then everybody do it, then it became like such an influential thing, right? Like nowadays, and I think even nowadays, right, when you look at the roster for SGIFF this year, there are still a lot of there's still a lot of people who take inspiration from slow cinema, from the masters like Api Chapong to Tsai Ming-liang and Ho Xiaoxian. I think later we can count how many times we mention these people when we talk about other feature films. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
so
and
10 years from is it, or 8 years from when you all were youth jury till now, it's still a very prevalent thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I'm not so sure why. It could be, of course, stylistic, right? But it could also be something that is just out of practicality. Yeah, this whole like long take and just do everything in one take kind of practice. Yeah, also because I guess there are certain cultures that also enable this. Like, for example, if you look at Love Diaz's films that are so very long, yeah, it's trying to imitate a kind of like modern wayang kulit kind of experience where like it is basically wayang kulit performances can take up the whole day one. Yeah, and people can just walk in and walk out and just chill and do whatever they want. It's like a 6 hour to 9 hour experience. So
Nice.
there are certain cultural practices that I think lend themselves to slow cinema in our region
Right.
lah. Yeah,
yeah, but I think we also have to admit that a lot of the adoption of the long take technique is driven by practical circumstance.
yeah,
Like
really.
I recall reading an article about Ho Xiaoxian. The reason why he employed like static long takes is because back then film cameras were very noisy, and I think in Ho's earlier films, if the camera was moving, the the film camera generated so much sound that it disrupted the location sound. So he had to dub the dialogue, and the result of dub dialogue is you lose the authenticity of the natural way that people speak. So in order for like Ho wanted to preserve the authenticity of everyday conversation, so he decided to lock down the camera to minimize the sound the camera generates. And I read that's the reason why he started using static long takes. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think a lot of directors also. I think for Love, he is also a mainly a static long take kind of person, and I think a lot of it is just budgetary reasons, right? Like it's cheaper to lock down the camera, don't move, don't pan, and just shoot like a wide shot long take.
yeah,
And
definitely.
but I guess for some other directors, it's more ideologically driven, like Tarkovsky, right? He has this specific idea of time and space. He talks about sculpting in time, right? So I think there are also long take masters who are driven by a, a specific cinematic. Yeah, John, do you have anything to? Actually, when did you meet Brandon, John?
I actually first met Brandon, I think in 2017, in
Mm.
Anthony's house, Anthony Chen's
Yeah, yeah,
house. We
yeah,
met in London, and because Brandon's cousin is Ivan, who at that time was also staying in London also. So I know I knew Ivan first,
Mm.
and there was one time Anthony asked me to come to his place for dinner, and then I went there and then we saw Brandon there, who I think was living there in his
Yeah,
place.
I think Anthony was kind enough to like let me bunk in with Ivan.
Mm.
Yeah, who was at that time he
About to
was
leave, Ray.
about to leave already. Yeah, he
Yeah,
was
yeah,
finishing his masters at NFTS.
yeah,
Yeah, so um, yeah, it was quite a surreal experience. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. That
Getting-
was the first time lah. That was the first time we met.
Let's start talking about the films.
Let's do
sure.
it, man.
Yeah, so we of course want to start with the opening film, Tiger Stripes, directed by Malaysian director Amanda Niao Yu.
Mm.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I love the film. What about you guys?
Brandon and I
Me?
was actually in the same screening. It
Yeah,
was the
yeah,
first film we saw. We bumped into each other, and then that was the
yeah,
first
yeah.
of many screenings we were in.
So for listeners, right? So the film is really set in like a rural madrasa. So there's a girl. The main character is a girl who is basically going through like puberty, and because of her bodily changes, yeah, she faces a lot of like discrimination and also like oppression from the local both her friends and also like the adults in her community, right? So one of it is like, of course, her own mother, and then there's also the the teachers in the madrasah as well. Yeah, so um, yeah, it's a kind of like film that mixes folklore into like body horror, yeah, as a way to talk about, I guess, like repression in this like rural madrasa context. Yeah, so I mean, um, the story itself is quite predictable lah for people who are into all these like horror films, right? And I think it does open very strongly. I thought in the first scene I was a bit like taken aback by like how this is going to go, because there is a particular scene where basically she's dancing a TikTok dance. Then after that she's of course in a madrasa uniform, right? But then she just suddenly like takes the tudong and she just throws it on the floor.
Yep.
Yeah, and I thought that was like a basically it's a oh shit moment, right? Like, oh, this is what this is gonna be about, kind of thing.
That moment was also very indicative of the energy and the tone that
Yeah.
audiences are about to kind of bear witness to for the rest of the film also. Yeah.
Yeah. There's like a kind of like Gen Z
Yep.
willingness to
Yeah.
want to like destroy
Yeah.
old ideologies and things like that. Yeah.
It's very modern, and it wears that ideology on its sleeve a lot,
Yeah.
which I think it's a good thing, but sometimes you can kind of see the frame of it a little obviously also.
Yeah. I think for me, right, my main problem with the film is that like it still uses quite a lot of cliches about, especially about the portrayal of Malays in rural Malaysia. Like especially the like the madrasah teachers are a very typical certain way. Then there's this Bomo character that comes in that is so um obviously patriarchal and backward. Yeah, I found that to be quite problematic actually, because it's like it's coming from a filmmaker who is Malaysian Chinese.
Mm,
Yeah, and this is a portrayal of Malaysian Malays in and I found that yeah, I wasn't really comfortable with how they were being portrayed lah in that sense.
right.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think for me the best thing about the film were the performances lah. So generally the whole film performances from top to bottom, I was quite so into it.
yeah. Especially the
And
lead.
yeah, the leads were great, and you can tell it's a first feature. There were bright moments, strong moments, some scenes better than some, but when the elements kind of are assembled together, you can see the kind of collage, a very collage texture to it. At some moments, that when she first get her symptoms, so to speak, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
going this kind of Cronenbergian body horror thing, and then after
Mm,
that, there's all this kind of deliberately lo-fi aesthetic that is coming out. Maybe
yeah,
it's a budgetary issue, but maybe they are deliberately going for that kind of humor
mm,
and effect as well. So when all these things kind of come together as a whole, because the themes are very strong, it still kind of works. But sometimes you will feel a little bit kind of taken aback by, oh, okay, so they are going this direction, and then after that you can see some camera shots, the way they track is like, oh, this is very cinematically literate, right? And then after
yeah.
that it kind of goes to this lowbrow humor kind of thing.
Mm, mm.
So it kind of jumps here and there a little bit, and that is the energy that I think it's being presented for a
Mm.
first film. And
Maybe Seping can also share what he thinks or what he likes about the film.
Because you said it's predictable, right? I don't know. For me, I got the opposite experience. I found the film quite unpredictable. and that was one of the reasons why I really enjoyed the film. Like it's really been a while since I enjoyed a film from Malaysia, and watching Tiger Stripes, I just had a really fun time just following this character. And the scenes with the Bomo that you described, actually I love those scenes lah. I agree maybe it's a bit lowbrow comedy, but it was so fun to watch.
It's fun to watch.
And
It is definitely fun to watch.
and I thought the scenes with the Bomo they were so hilarious and so well done. The actor who played the Bomo, John, you reminded me is the same guy from La Luna.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean his performance was admittedly over the top, but it was done in a way that it was not too much, and it didn't throw me off the film, right? I mean, I love the Bomo character, to be honest. Like he's so funny. Yeah, and watching this whole film, I was just like trying to anticipate, like, oh my god, what's trying to come next? What's coming next? And I found it hard to predict, to be honest. And
Interestingly, the Bomo is much more reserved in La Luna. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
and you know, a lot of people compare Amanda with this French director Julia Decona, right, who did Raw and Titan. And I had this same feeling watching Titan. Titan is, I don't know how Brandon, have you seen Titan?
No, but I've seen Raw.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I watch Titan, right, is this the main character is also a female, and she also goes through some kind of bodily transformation, and in a way it's also some kind of coming of age film.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, in Titan, suddenly this girl starts having intercourse with a truck, and black liquid starts gushing out from God knows where. And that's in like the first, I think, like 10-15 minutes of the film. And after that, right, the film just lead us to places where you would never imagine. And I got this same feeling watching Tiger Stripes. And it just both just so happens to fall under this quote unquote body horror genre, which I mean I have some problems with calling Tiger Stripes body horror. I don't really feel it's body horror. In the sense of David Cronenberg kind of body horror.
No,
Yeah.
not as intense, right? Not as intense as a Cronenberg kind of film.
Yeah.
I mean-
also very different also.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, right? Like for me, horror films try to explore this anxiety that we have about certain things in our society. And with body horror, I think body horror came about as a critique against how like scientists were trying to experiment with our body, right? Like things like, you know, gene editing, and you know there is this transhumanist movement that's obsessed with using technology to augment the human body. I feel like body horror came about because of this anxiety and this fear. And when you watch a Cronenberg film or any body horror film, the horror comes from the fact that the human tries to augment the body, and then something negative results from that. And the feeling of horror comes about because you are witnessing literally something terrible happening to the body.
Right.
And when you watch it on screen, right, there is this visceral reaction that you have inside you, and that's what the horror is about. And I don't think Tiger Stripes falls into that. That's why I don't think Tiger Stripes is a body horror film.
Yeah, actually, it's true. Every time you see something happen to this girl, right, rather than like, oh my god, this is super scary, right, you feel more of her visceral rage and anger rather than like,
Yeah.
oh my god, this is happening, that kind. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually that's interesting, right? Because the figure of the were tiger, right, is actually a very folkloric, almost like mythical
Yep.
figure in actually I would say our region, like in Southeast Asia. Like there's a lot of, especially in Indonesia and Malaysia, there's always this like figure of a were tiger, like a man turning into a tiger kind of a thing,
Mm.
is sometimes used, or rather is often used as like a kind of expression of rage, of uncontrollable, like even like generational rage, right? Like a kind of
Mm.
from a rage from the past. Yeah, a kind of frustration that about something that is systemic or
Yep.
inherited. Yeah, and that was definitely, I think, one of the strong points lah of the film, right? It tries to use that as a way to express this rage towards maybe towards the treatment of women's bodies. Actually, I started following Amanda's work since her short films. So
Mm.
she made a short film. It was back in, I can't remember, is it 2017 or 18? It's called It's Easier to Raise Cattle.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
It's the one about Pontianaks. Yeah, and actually, I really liked her short film.
There's
Yeah,
also the same things that were kind of explored in
yeah,
that film is
yeah,
also found in Tiger Stripes as well.
yeah. But I like that short film. Personally, I like it more because I think the Pontianak character, right, is seen as a kind of like um lie in order to maintain some kind of transgression, and it's like intentionally using folklore to subvert like expectations of what a Pontianak is. And I thought that was very clever. Yeah. Whereas like I feel like Tiger Stripes played it a bit more. This is why I found it a bit more predictable. Like it played it a bit more straight.
Mm.
Like it was really about her transformation into a were tiger, and it
Yep.
was just the trajectory is really just that, right? Yeah. So I thought it was a lot more self. Her short film was a lot more self-aware to me. Yeah, about
Mm.
what a folklore can be. Yeah, and I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I, I I definitely see where you're coming from, Brandon.
Mm.
Yeah, but I still I still really enjoy Tiger Stripes.
I think it
Yeah,
is enjoyable. I do think that as a
yeah,
whole, it
Enjoy it. Yeah,
is
yeah,
enjoyable. It's not boring. It's not.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good watch from start to end. Yeah.
Mm.
yeah. I think this is the first Malaysian film I've really enjoyed in a long, long time.
That is a good point. that is a
Right.
that is a very valid point. Yeah, and I think I said to you, Say Peng, earlier in the day, uh, one of the stronger opening films in SGIFF in this past few years. Yeah,
Mm.
Yeah, and we want to plug Anticipate Pictures is releasing Tiger Stripes.
Yeah,
So
I,
go
I'm
check it
wearing
out.
I'm wearing their shirt now. If you, I don't know whether you have this. This is an Anticipate Picture
wow,
shirt.
Vincent happy. Yeah, actually,
Yeah,
that's a very good shirt, man.
yeah. It's just like straight up tells
Yeah,
people to stop using your phones. Yeah.
educational.
Let's move on to the feature films in
All
the
right.
Asian feature film competition.
Yep.
Nice.
So yeah, so the Asian feature film competition has 12 films in total from different countries in Asia. So we have films from Iran, Taiwan, Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, what else? Korea,
India.
Malaysia also.
India,
Yep.
yeah, Malaysia,
Hmm.
yeah. So let's start with Critical Zone, an Iranian film directed by Ali Ahmadzadeh, which won the Golden Leopard at Locarno this year. How do you guys find the film?
I didn't watch it.
Okay,
Okay,
so
Brad,
this was I think this was one of the late night screenings, right, that we went for.
yeah,
Yeah. So I know you really enjoyed the film. I enjoyed it also. Yeah, I think it was a really um it had a very tight premise. It was mainly about this Iranian drug dealer who basically goes around the city in his car, and he dispenses drugs, and it's all set in a single night. Yeah, so it is a bit of like Taxi Tehran, but also it has this like it's not all shot in the car itself. It has some like location scenes. Yeah, I think there's one at the airport, there's one at the hospital, and some other interiors lah, like bedroom and things like that. So he goes around to like help people either by giving them drugs or by like I guess actually by mostly giving them drugs, right? If I'm not wrong.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, but it's quite interesting because the way that this um character goes around to like dispense drugs, right? Like to do like his business, right? Is a way of like arguably a way of giving comfort to the masses. Yeah, because there's so many people in Iran, I guess, in pain, suffering, and he is the one who is going around doing, for lack of a better term, like doing God's work in a way. Because there are also some parallels between him and like a Christ-like figure. Yeah, but it's like a modern day kind of like interpretation of it lah. Like this is one way of interpreting it lah. Yeah, so I thought that was quite clever. Yeah, in seeing as how also this film is banned in Iran, and also the filmmaker, if I'm not wrong, the filmmaker is also banned from making films. So this is really done in a very like guerrilla style, similar to what Jafar Panahi would do. Yeah, very guerrilla style, under the radar, shoot in the middle of the night when there's not a lot of people around, that kind of thing.
Brandon, what made you say like this is a parable? You said the main character is almost like Jesus Christ and
Yeah,
he's going around healing people. Like what gave you that perspective?
Was there a
yeah. I mean,
feeling of salvation at the end?
it's more like, okay, it's not that he is really like a saint, but it's okay. In the first place, the casting of the main character is already very similar to like a Jesus kind of figure, like his appearance lah, and also um him giving comfort to the masses in his own way, right? Is sort of like sometimes he tells people lies in order to make them feel better about themselves. Sometimes so for instance, like I think one of the scenes is in a hospital. He has this deal with a nurse that works at the hospital who takes care of a lot of like old people, and these old people, I think they are always anxious and they're always sort of like unable to really be at peace. So he drugs their food for her so that they will eventually go and sleep peacefully. Like I mean,
Right, right.
it's like he dabbles in hashish, right? So he basically like bakes like chocolate cake with the hashish, and he goes to the hospital to feed these old people so that they can sleep. Yeah, and I think he also like one of the more significant scenes is with this like air stewardess, yeah, who um I guess is one of his like major clients lah. Like the air stewardess also goes overseas to like bring some goods for him, and I guess it's suggested that they have some kind of like intimate relationship also. There's this one scene I think is probably Say Peng's favorite scene where the air stewardess goes sort of like, I mean, they were doing like some hard drugs, right? And then they just start to go on this like epic like scream off the top of their lungs like fuck you to
No, no. Let me. No, I think they were somewhere in some deserted desert doing drugs,
yeah,
and all of a sudden there were some like gangsters of thugs that tried to chase them, correct? And then a very quiet drug taking scene suddenly escalated into a chase scene,
yeah.
and wow, it was damn intense. And then when they finally escaped those thugs who were chasing them, she that the car had this like window at the top, right? She just stuck her body out, and then she started screaming.
Yeah. It was I mean it's a very memorable scene, right? Like they have a kind of like grittiness to their aesthetic. I think it's very like almost reminiscent of like Safdie Brothers kind of vibe. Yeah, especially if you watch like Good Time. Yeah, it's very much in that vein of like drug dealer kind of cinema. Yeah,
It's
very,
adrenaline cinema.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, and I think what is also very notable about this film is the sound design. Yeah, I think the the was it the producer who came down? Yeah, the filmmaker couldn't come down because he is not able to travel lah. Essentially, yeah. So the producer came down and he talked about how I think the filmmaker spent a year just on sound design alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was it's the sound design is quite notable. It has like a kind of like hallucinatory effect. It's not
Yeah.
really realistic. Yeah, it tries to sort of like push the boundaries about what are they listening to, and like it really is a mood piece lah. Yeah, I think that was very well done. I enjoyed that. Yeah.
Because basically the entire film almost entirely takes place in the car lah. So
Mm.
I think that the sound design was very psychological lah, rather than realistic.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
And I think it's so interesting also like the kind of films that we are seeing from Iran now, right? Because I mean, as a as somebody who watches Iranian cinema, if you watch the Iranian new wave, so many of the films are kind of like uplifting, and they all
mm,
are kind of, I mean, for lack of a better term, they describe it as very humanist, right? Especially if you watch like
mm,
Kiarostami's works. Yeah, they all
mm,
sort of like portray Iran as this like such a kind place where like when disaster strikes, everybody's together. That kind of yeah. And something like Critical Zone is so different and it's so fresh, right? Yeah, that it really paints Iran, or rather Tehran, in a totally different like there's this like CD underground, and the
yeah.
opening scene and the ending scene even goes underground. Yeah,
Yeah, and I love it that it's almost a subversion of the car ride genre. Because
yeah,
if you think about it, Kiarostami, Panahi, and probably a few other Iranian filmmakers, they are all doing this like main character in the taxi genre.
yeah,
It's like the Iranian version of Singapore's HDB drama, right? So, and a lot of it is just this very harmless main character driving around, picking up your regular Iranian folks. And yeah, as Brandon said, it presents this very pastoral and this very human beings are good people kind of perspective. Whereas in Critical Zone, you don't have that romantic notion of Iran almost.
yeah,
It's a very like gritty urban, completely opposite to what you usually see in the films of like some of our favorite Iranian filmmakers, whether it's Panahi or Makhmalbaf or Kiarostami.
yeah. Definitely, definitely. Yeah. Do you know if this is a debut feature?
I mean, in the Asian competition, it's usually debut or sophomore lah. So
Yeah.
I,
But then
either
again, if
way,
he maybe not debut, because if he's debut, how come he already banned already?
maybe he got banned after he won the Golden Leopard. I don't know.
Okay, who knows? Yeah,
Next film is A Journey in Spring, which none of us watched.
Yeah.
yeah,
You won Best Actress though, and
yeah.
Mm.
yeah,
I heard from David that the performances were really good, although it can be a difficult watch, like in terms of how it forces you to confront certain I guess certain events in life. Like I think it was about somebody's death. Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, I didn't watch that. Neither did we watch Hesitation Wound.
yeah,
Yeah. So really really sorry that we couldn't we couldn't watch all the feature
yeah,
films in the competition because of clashing schedules and
yeah.
what we personally wanted to watch. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, just for the listeners out there, right? the three of us got the festival pass, which please do it again next year.
Okay, that's my festival
I
pass. Babe. Can we do that again?
okay. Let's flash our festival pass.
Okay, hold on.
Mine got picture one.
Yeah, mine also have.
Yeah, I think everyone got their picture there. In the
Yeah,
airport.
I think thanks to the festival pass, I've probably seen close to like 25 or 28 films in the festival.
It's quite a good deal. It's quite a good deal, I have to say.
Oh, it's
$200.
super good deal.
Yeah, in
Yeah,
all
please.
honesty, right, I think it's been a long time coming, and I think this needed to happen like sooner. It's such a great thing because now, like people who really want to watch like every single film, they can do so easily, and even the planning is easy, right? Because they straight away
Yeah,
like put out films that you are unable to make, and you can straight away like buy all at once rather than like in the past for us, if we wanted to watch a lot of films, we had to wrestle with Cystic, the Cystic website, like for so long because there's a time
yeah.
limit of 10 minutes, right, to buy your films, and if you never click fast enough, it can just restart and then you just lose all your effort, right, on the Cystic page.
Yeah, for me, the best perk of the festival pass is you do not have to deal with cystic.
Definitely, yeah. It was so painful, in the past few editions of SGIFF.
yeah. Let's not remind ourselves of the pain. So moving on to, I think one of our favorite films from this festival is Inside the Yellow Cocoon Shell by Pham Thien An. It's the Vietnamese film that won the Camera d'Or when it premiered at Directors Fortnight at Cannes this year, and also the winner of SGIF's Best Asian Feature.
Yeah, I think this is to me at least is fully deserved
Yeah.
because of also, I mean, the ambition of the film, what it tries to do. So the film is really just about this guy, right, this agnostic man who at the beginning of the film says that he doesn't really know whether to believe in God or not. I think one of his friends asked him during like a drinking session, and then what happens next is that like his sister-in-law uh, meets an accident, and by some miracle, um, the sister-in-law's child, who was also in the accident, is escaped completely unscathed. And as a result of this, he tries to find his older brother, who is basically his nephew's father lah. So he goes back to the rural village where they grew up and to find this brother. And on his search for this brother, it almost takes like a kind of like Laventura's turn in that it's no longer about finding the brother, although he does try, but it's more about him coming to terms with some kind of like spiritual spiritual like desire, or yeah, it's about him finding himself in a very like spiritual way. Yeah, so I mean, I thought it's very masterfully done
Yeah.
in terms of the blocking and the long takes, and it's, to me, it's by no means slow. Yeah, even though it does have long takes.
I appreciate the film for its presentation, right, and able to still tackle such questions or things it's trying to present, which can be super vague actually,
Yeah, yeah,
and very hard to articulate. It's able to question the same things as, say, Tree of Life, even though both films are completely different in presentation and in stylistic and everything. But being presented in this 3 hour long take film and still be quite clear at the end.
yeah,
I thought it was a really good watch.
yeah. I mean, there were some parts that really meandered, right? And
Yep.
like for example, I think there's this one part where it was about, I think, a good 15 minutes of this old veteran who was fighting in the Vietnam War,
Wow.
literally
That's
talking
Yeah.
experiences and
that's one of my
how he managed to
yeah.
survive
Good.
Yeah, and while the rest of his friends, like his company, died, right? That kind of thing. And it was very interesting because it's sort of like the camera sort of follow him all the way into the
Yeah.
house,
Yeah.
asking for directions and things like that. Then he went into the house, and then it's just outside the house. The camera
Yeah.
is outside the house. Yeah, and there's like this voiceover narration kind of thing, and it was one of the more. I think it was one of the most like interesting segments of the film.
That was so
Yeah,
impressive though.
Yeah,
Such an impressive shot.
yeah,
that's one of my favorite scenes from the film.
Yeah. Without trying to spoil things for audience, right? Let me just explain how the shot starts. It starts from a wide shot, right? You know, when they were like the bike was being parked there, and then they were just talking, and then they get onto the bike, and then I remember there was like ducks on the on the ground, and then right the camera just follows, and it's a legit bike ride that goes through from one part of the village
yeah,
to the houses. And not only that, he stops somewhere and then he still have to go through a slope or something. It stops and then he finally stops there already. Right? Not even Fast and Furious or whatever automobile film right has as
and it's all
impressive
very
shot as that.
seamless. You know, the camera
Yeah,
movement is very seamless,
yeah,
and I can't imagine how they might have done it. Yeah,
yeah,
because it's literally. I mean, it's all like kampong road. You know,
yeah,
it's like
yeah,
muddy, and
yeah,
you can tell that the terrain is like anyhow, and
yeah,
yeah. So really props to
yeah.
whoever behind the camera for that, man.
It stops right outside the house, right outside the window, and then it slowly tracks to the window, and then it
Yeah,
starts to follow as they move from one part of the house to the other house. It slowly pans there just to review how he was actually shot.
yeah.
The
I
lighting
think
change. Yeah.
it was like a total of I think at least 20 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
that
Yeah.
take. Yeah. So yeah, I think a lot of people actually compare. I mean, when I talk to people, and I also look at reviews on like Letterbox, right? They talk about comparisons between this and Api Chapong. So you see, Api Chapong count number one. Okay. But to me, I feel like it's not really similar
Yeah.
to Api Chapong.
I think it's
Yeah,
not.
it's
Uh,
it's it's sort of like a kind of um to me it's more like Tarkovsky.
yeah.
There is a
Yeah.
lot of intricate blocking, there's a lot of movement in and out of the camera, like characters and faces sort of appear unexpectedly into the frame. Like he has this he likes to do this thing also where the 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 person appears like from bottom up, like the face appears from bottom up.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that was, to me, I thought that was very recognizably Tarkovsky.
Mm,
Yeah, and I thought it really worked. Yeah,
mm,
even the runtime, I didn't feel like it was particularly like overly long.
mm,
Yeah, I thought by the end, everything sort of came together.
yeah.
I think there was one particular scene where he sort of reconnects with a childhood lover also,
Yep. Yep.
who has now
Yeah.
become a son,
Yep.
right? And he decides to leave. He decides to leave the nephew at the school where this
Yeah.
childhood lover is
Yeah.
teaching at.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's, I mean, there's a lot of all these like meanderings, right? But it all sort of comes together at the end when he sort of decides to, I guess, give up on his search for his brother. Yeah, and he also, there's also this thing where he learns that his brother actually once considered becoming a priest before before the brother is eventually decides to marry.
Mm,
Yeah, and then I think the ending scene was sort of like him going through a kind of like partial baptism
yeah.
where he decides to lower himself into the water, and as the audience you hear the submersion of the
Yeah. Yep.
water, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I thought that was quite
Yeah.
powerful actually. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, um there is definitely like this running theme, right, that to me is a question that is a very old school cinema question, which is like
Right.
asking audiences like, why do we stop believing in God?
Yep.
Yeah, and I think this is something that harkens back to the days of like Tarkovsky or Bresson, yeah, where cinema used to try to attempt to answer those like very big questions. Yeah, and nowadays I think with Marvel films, the broad landscape of movie making is really just entertainment, and it doesn't try to tackle these questions anymore, right? And I mean, it's great to see that like a film from Vietnam can do this. Yeah, although this is not the first film from Vietnam that I noticed had all these like um, themes and questions. I don't know whether you remember this Vietnamese film called City of Mirrors. It's like
Is that is that Vietnamese?
it's a Vietnamese film.
Okay,
So
I thought it was Taiwanese. Okay.
I think maybe that's another one. But City of Mirrors, it was also, I think it was in 2018 or something like that. Yeah, very sort of experimental, but also had this like strong Tarkovsky influence of the flowing long takes. And I thought um, it's great that Vietnam is keeping Tarkovsky alive.
Wow.
Because definitely, I mean, Singapore is definitely not doing that, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good point actually. It's of course it's not to Tarkovsky's level or what, but I think maybe two or three films in,
Yeah, yeah,
there could be something. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Props to props
Nice.
to props to more Tarkovsky like filmmakers. So,
yeah,
a
No, no,
statement
no.
that we probably would have frowned upon,
yeah.
back in your jury days.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's also such a sad thing, right? That like films like that these days don't get commercial release. I mean,
Yeah,
they like as you were saying. I mean, just now John and I were just talking, right? And he was saying that Inside the Yellow Cocoon went straight to Netflix.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like one day after they won
yeah,
Best
it went
Asian Feature,
to Netflix. And
straight to
and
Netflix.
I know going straight to Netflix is I mean, financially it's terrible. For a film. Yeah, Netflix doesn't pay a lot
Yeah.
for them to,
Hmm.
have the
Wow.
rights to stream your film like endlessly.
I really don't know how many people will watch it like in Singapore. Maybe like 10.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It probably have to be like kind of deep dive into that algorithm to like discover it. It's like,
I
oh, what
mean,
is this?
to be fair, it is a hard sell lah. I mean, in the
Yeah.
first place, 3 hour films. Okay lah, it's strange also, right? Because 3 hour films are becoming so common these
Yeah.
days,
Yeah.
even in commercial cinema.
Yeah.
Like Scorsese is making 3 hour
Yeah.
films. Nolan is making 3 hour films. Yeah,
One thing about this film, right, that I think why I feel it's a really worthy watch, right, is that it's beautiful, and that's a good enough reason.
yeah,
That
yeah,
Hmm.
definitely.
every single moment, even the more derivatives ones, right, it's so considerate of artistic elements to be put into the frame.
Mm,
Right, and the camera moving in, moving out. It's very aware of trying to make you feel uh, uh, the poetry, uh, and I really appreciate that a lot. That it's not it is grounded in reality, but it's also trying to get out of it as well.
yeah,
In its form, in its artistic decisions.
yeah. So definitely more people need to watch this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next film we have on our list is Monisme, which I think only Brandon you watch. Can you
Yeah.
briefly tell us what you think of
So
the film?
okay, so I think this film is actually a documentary essay on Mount Merapi. So it tries to basically depict, right, all these struggles for um, ownership of Mount Merapi. So there's like um, the political struggle, the scientific struggle, the folkloric, spiritual, and even like at one point like there's this like paramilitary group taking over the mountain and things like that. So um, I thought it was it can be quite interesting. but only if you really understand the context. I feel like I was a bit lacking in contextual knowledge when I was watching the film, and I think it hindered my ability to really like fully appreciate it, because it was, I think, formally it was very experimental. There were some parts that were like docu, some parts slow cinema, some parts horror. Um, yeah, and it tries to like basically paint a very incongruent picture of Indonesia, and I think that was intentional lah, like as a way of like capturing, you know, the incongruency of Indonesia itself. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I just find that these kinds of docu essays, you either really like it or you are totally alienated by it. Yeah. Okay, I think, yeah, basically I wasn't able to really like fully understand it based on its context lah. Yeah. So okay, then the next film that we have is Morrison by Putipong.
Morrison. Yeah, a
Yeah.
fun fact. Putipong Arumping, his short film was in competition that year when we were both in the youth jury.
Yeah, it was Three
Yeah,
Wheels.
3 years, and I was advocating for it to win the youth jury prize.
I think I was not on your side.
Yeah, I think you were pushing for Kavik's shot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I was pushing for Kavik shot is called some what was it called again?
Um,
Something
three
wheels
something,
or three
three
something.
something, right? Three
Yeah.
wheels? Is it 3 wheels?
No, Three Wheels is this Putipong Arumping's film. But yeah, I was pushing for Kavik's film. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh yeah,
So yeah, honestly, when I saw Putipong his debut film Mentari,
yeah.
when I saw that it won some prize in Venice, right?
Mm.
Yeah, I felt very what's that word?
You
Um,
you were affirmed of your choice.
yeah, I was affirmed. I felt
The
I saw
verdict.
something in this director.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, but unfortunately, I think we both didn't like Morrison.
yeah.
Yeah, what
Um,
happened, man?
I feel like, okay, so this is something that was also sort of kind of present in Manta Ray. The visuals, right, are strong, but I think in terms of having a very like coherent or believable story, it didn't really capture audiences that well lah. Or it really didn't capture me nor Say Peng lah. So it's really about this guy who was an ex-musician, and goes back to he goes to this hotel that is like sort of in disarray, and he deals with like the ghosts and the history of of his hotel, and at the same time, I guess he also tries to uncover a bit of his own like personal family history. Yeah, but um, there's
That
some
that that, that sounds like a very good Jim Jarmusch film.
yeah, I mean, the thing is, these kinds of films have sort of been done before. Yeah, they try to deal a bit with like colonial violence, because one of the people who constantly stays at the hotel is this like very like fat, diseased American man, uh, and basically like the women of the hotel have to like service him. The funny thing is actually Thailand is the officially speaking, Thailand is the only Southeast Asian country that has never been colonized.
The Americans had a military base in Thailand, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm talking about official colonization, right? But not, of course, things like cultural colonization and yeah, having having like military bases and things like that. Yeah. So I think it didn't feel very coherent to me. Um, there was some, I guess, interesting shots, but I think that even the writing of the dialogue was not that interesting. Yeah, it felt a bit student filmy. Yeah,
Oh yeah. I had the same thought. I just felt like this is a student filmmaker who is trying to copy Wong Kar Wai in some way, and it's a bad version of that.
yeah. I mean, who can copy Wong Kar Wai? You know?
Yeah, so yeah, it didn't do much for me, this film.
Yeah,
So
Yeah,
not
we.
no
I think
no thumbs up for Morrison.
yeah, no thumbs up for Morrison, unfortunately. Yeah, I think
yeah,
we also wanted to watch another film, so we couldn't finish the film. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
no, honestly, if the film was good, I would have stayed on, but it wasn't good lah. So
yeah.
we left halfway.
Okay.
Mm.
Then the next
Mm.
film is Snow in Midsummer by Chong Kiat Aun.
Yeah, which I
Uh,
Yeah,
unfortunately couldn't watch as well. But both of you did.
yeah. Say Peng, what do you think of the film?
maybe Brandon, you just talk a bit about the story
Sure.
first.
Okay, so the film is a film of two halves. So the first half is set in the past in I think May 13, 1969. So this is a film about the riots that occurred on that day, and it's a even until today it's a very like um, repressed chapter in Malaysia history. So it's a very brutal riot. And then the second half of the film takes place 50 years later, or I think 49 years later, something like that. And it was right after Malaysia, uh, had an election, and then basically it's about a character who survives the riots, going to sort of like find the graves of the people who died during those riots. Yeah, and I think it's definitely interesting in its premise. It tries to deal with
Mm.
like our relationship to this like suppressed chapter of history. Um,
Mm.
however, I feel like it was not affecting enough, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah. So I feel like there was a lot of potential, especially in the first half. Yeah, but they didn't. So they didn't really show the actual violence of the riots.
Mm, mm.
Yeah, it was sort of off screen and inferred.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's intentional, right?
Yeah,
Partly maybe for cinematic reasons, like off-screen violence can sometimes feel more powerful. But
yeah,
I think also because of budgetary reasons, so they obviously can't stage the riot scenes.
Wow.
yeah.
Do you all feel
And
like this film's kind of the politics of whatever that is trying to show this real life situations that happen kind of overshadowed the emotions and also actual actual story between characters.
Mm, I mean, I feel like um I didn't know much about the riots before watching this, to be
Okay.
honest. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I wasn't really like sort of intentionally looking at a film that was about said riots, right? But
Okay.
and even then, it I feel like it didn't make me feel the real impact of these riots.
Mm.
So
mm,
so in I guess in like say okay, the film has received a lot of comparisons to like Ho Sao Xian's like
Yep. City
films
of Sadness.
about City of Sadness, about Hao Nan Hao Nu, where they portray a certain past. But I think what is missing is that there is no aftermath.
Okay.
So in things like City of Sadness, you feel the aftermath. Like
Yes.
when people die, you see them grieve, you
Yep.
see them go through shit. Then same thing for Hao Nan Hao Nu, like
Yeah.
you see the aftermath. But this one sort of just cuts right at the peak of the violence,
I understand.
and then it goes to the future. So I think the aftermath is not immediately felt, and I thought um, that took away from. I mean, I wanted to feel for it, but it sort of didn't allow me to because of
Okay.
that. Yeah,
yeah, and I feel like the way it was shot, right? There's a lot of static long takes,
yeah,
and the characters were written in such a way that you couldn't really like identify with them. So there is this distanciation thing going on between us and the characters, and at the same time, the film is also a bit oblique. Um, so I think all of that added up to us coming out of the film like feeling very underwhelmed.
Yeah.
And add to the fact that I feel like the second part of the film doesn't really contribute much to the whole film. Maybe the last few scenes at the cemetery, which I felt were the most relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah, I think it's a film of two halves, but the second half could have been just like the last 15 minutes or so. Yeah, there was a lot of like journeying there to find the cemetery and like not knowing where it is, and I think it distracts from the film in general. Yeah.
When you say find a cemetery, it suddenly transported me back to Inside the Yellow Cocoon. Like a lot of finding and all.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it is like that. Like the character goes around asking, like, "Oh, this, like, where can I go to? Or is this the place, or things like that, or like following like her own trail and things." Yeah,
Do you all feel that the film could possibly just be about the 1969 riots itself, and that's
I
it?
think I think it wanted to bring in this idea of the election, the recent elections, where I think there was a change in power, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So he wanted to have that slant. So I thought, I mean, it's an interesting idea, but it didn't really, like combine well together. Yeah,
Yeah, I think the film's premise of depicting the past and the present and showing that contrast, if it's executed well, it would have been a lot better than if the film had just depicted the past. Yeah, but unfortunately, I didn't feel like it was executed well. Yeah.
yeah. Although it is a film that is banned in Malaysia.
Oh, for real?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh my
So
god!
we are screening it, even though it's banned in Malaysia. I guess this is like their version of
Operation Co-Store.
Operation Coastal. This is their version to Singapore with love.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we make a film about Operation Co-Store, then we bring it to Malaysia to screen. Yeah.
Huh. It seems like this is the way to get around.
It's a geographic arbitrage between
Yeah.
Singapore and Malaysia.
Yeah, man. Singapore is quite interesting. There are some films that are completely banned in Malaysia, right? You'll be surprised, no? The post is done not only in Singapore, done in MediaCorp some more.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
was
yeah.
this film by Name We. I forgot what's the title of the film. I think it's called Barbie or something. It was released like last year or last 2 years ago. Super like controversial in Malaysia. Post done in Singapore, done in MediaCorp in-house somehow. Yeah.
Power.
Yeah, so our next film is on the Tenants, a
Yep.
South Korean film, a debut South Korean film by Yoon Young, which
Yup.
won Best Script, Best Director, and the Fipresky Award. Oh, you won Best Script also. Wow,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It took a lot of awards. And I think
And
also
it's
nice.
also the
uh,
world premiere.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like this film a lot. I thought it was very well deserved. Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's really a
so
surprise.
for our audiences, this film is about a man who basically discovers a loophole in this like South Korean housing market uh by basically like subletting his house to new tenants, so that his landlord will not evict him for not being able to like pay the rent and things like that. And however, like the people that he invites to his house sort of like find a way to exploit him as well, and use the same subletting system to like use it against him, and there's sort of this like whole reference to Franz Kafka and
Yeah.
specifically the metamorphosis, where he starts to feel small or starts to feel like specifically like a cockroach in his own house. Yeah,
Yeah. And I mean you mentioned metamorphosis, which is, I mean, it's a very obvious allusion, right? Because in the film there's also a cockroach, but I feel like watching the film, there is also a sense of the castle, right? Where it's like, if you imagine you're the main character and then you have these two random people coming in and doing all sorts of random things, you would feel like the main character in the castle, like what on earth is going on?
yeah. There's definitely a kind of like um I think, okay, in the first place, the two characters that come in, the tenants, so to speak, were so well casted, and I think
Oh yeah,
also so well portrayed, because they really
yeah.
look so like
Yeah.
out of the
Out of the
ordinary.
world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the way they smile at you, the way they dress, like the fedora with the two, with the two. Yeah, I thought it was
That,
it's like so simple and it's well done. Yeah,
that Tenant is great. He's more known in for his appearance in Korean drama The Glory as
right.
this kind of like this very pervert school teacher. Yeah. That appears
Okay.
just in the short few scenes in a few episodes, but also very unique look in that show as well.
Yeah, he has a great face. Like the
Yeah,
way he stares into the
Yeah.
camera is just nerve wracking, right?
yeah.
Like you just
Yeah.
think that something is off with this guy.
Yeah, when I was watching the film, I was just filled with this constant sense of suspense. Like what on earth is this guy gonna do? Like,
Yeah.
is he gonna kill him? Is he gonna like strangle him? What? I was just the sense of anticipation was so strong.
Yeah, and I think this film is really like I would say maybe a very concise version of Parasite. If Parasite focused only on the working class,
Mm.
yeah. So this is really about the struggles of the working class, sort of like pitted against each other. Um, and I think there's also a point where, I mean, Parasite sort of explores this whole like in a house there's the different levels, right? There's like people living under the house and things like that. But this one is sort of the opposite. It's
Yeah,
like people living in the attic.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's I must say the twist is well done as well. Yeah,
yeah.
it's a
One
real
Yeah.
watch. Yeah,
one thing about this film that I think I really appreciated is that it's a very sincere film also in its filmmaking.
yeah,
You can see
Mm.
that this filmmaker she's probably not as how to say she doesn't go for like this has to look 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 cinematic, like maybe other films that you see in the fest, but it's so immediate and there's such a fresh sense of clarity in its scenes. It just comes to you like that, uh, and but it's always very intelligent in the ideas that it's presenting. Even though the presentation of it can be a little bit how to say uh, absurd at times. Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone in the Q&A after watching this, right, said that this deserves to win the Palme d'Or. I was very amused by that, but because he was saying that he watched Anatomy of a Fall, and I
Mm.
think he's a expat living in Singapore, so this rental thing is like a huge problem, right, for
right.
Singaporeans, especially for expats living in Singapore. So he was so vehemently behind the film, and he basically said that if I can award the Palme d'Or to you, I think you deserve the Palme d'Or to the filmmaker herself.
If you win
Nice.
the Palme d'Or, my rent will go down.
Yeah, the filmmaker was obviously very touched by such a sentiment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, and I just feel like there are a lot of, for example, like this film, and then there is House of Hummingbirds, and a few years back, I programmed this film for Singapore Film Society called A Haunting Hitchhike, which is also by a female South Korean director, and that was her debut. I feel like there are a lot of female South Korean directors whose films are they fall through the cracks, and although they are very good, so it just makes me wonder how many of like this kind of debut films have we missed out because they haven't been spotlighted.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to watch more films from female South Korean filmmakers. I think, yeah, most of the Korean masters that we know of are all men,
Yeah.
right? Like Park Chan Wook. I mean, recently Kim Ki Duk died. Then there is yeah, so many Bong Joon Ho and things like that. Yeah,
Yeah, so kudos. So the next film, which none of us watch, is Valli. Is by this Indian director. It's Indian, right? Manoj Shinde.
Yeah.
yes.
Indian film.
Yeah.
So too
So
bad. Cannot watch.
Yeah, really sorry that you couldn't watch your film.
Sorry. Sorry, Manoj.
Maybe in the future, SGIF can send us some screeners. Eh.
That would be great, man. KV, make it. Let's do this, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we should tag KB in
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
yeah. So all in all, I feel like the films that won their respective prizes, they deserved it. Although I wish Critical Zone won something because I really liked it, but I think overall I feel like the prizes went to the right films. How about you guys?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
I was actually rooting for these two films.
Yeah, I was
Inside
rooting
Yellow
for
Cocoon
Tenants.
Shell. Yeah. Inside Yellow Cocoon Shell is that
Yeah.
it has all the elements of the best Asian feature. Yeah.
All right. You want to take a break first?